On this edition of Public Interest, unemployment is down, but the use of fixed-term contracts seems to be more prevalent. Trade unionists and others are concerned about what this means for workers. One national heroine and 6 national heroes. Is it time for another to be named, and should it be Louise Bennett? And later in the program, we take a look back at the plastic ban. I am Andre Jebinson, and Public Interest starts right now. As of July this year, unemployment is at an all-time low, 7.8%. That is according to the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin. Labor force comprises 1.3 million Jamaicans. Youth unemployment is 21.8%, and all seems headed in the right direction, except unions are critical of the increasing use of fixed-term contracts, saying employees are being robbed of their empowerment and job stability. So, let's discuss. With me in studio is Kadria Folks. She's an attorney at law who specializes in labor laws. And on the phone is trade unionist and opposition Senator Lambert Brown. We had invited Government Senator Cavan Gale to be with us, but he's traveling and his nominee is also unavailable. The Jamaica Employers Federation is also unavailable, but the show goes on. Welcome to the program, Mr. Brown. Welcome, Ms. Folks.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so first of all, when we hear this thing, fixed-term contracts,
Right.
Ms. Folks, what exactly are we talking about?
So we're talking about a temporary work arrangement where employers try to pass on some risk and responsibilities to the worker, whereby they engage them on temporary contracts, whether for fixed term or short term or even casual. And the implication for the worker is very severe, because what you find often is that because of the insecurity that results, they're not able to provide for even basic needs, or there's that level of insecurity in terms of future planning for even their lives. And the main implication of temporary contracts is that they tend to have low wages. They tend to be outside of the protective labor legislation. And also there's no income and social security. So,
Mr. Brown, do we see where this is increasing? Is there tangible evidence that more and more employers, especially in the government services, are using more fixed-term contracts?
Well, first, the unions are not the only ones who are complaining about this. Anybody who must run the state must look down the road, and if you have thousands of workers without benefits of pension and other old age benefits, that's going to fall to the state later on. Mm-hmm. That's you and me and your listeners and viewers. So the unions are not the only ones complaining about this. And in recent time, more employers are realizing that you need to engage your workers in ways. I saw one insurance company saying we need to find ways to engage our employees so that we will get from them loyalty. Now, this is not just a temporary thing. I've seen people on fixed term contract for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, rolled over and over. And in some cases, I've seen people working 20 odd years in these situations, far from being temporary. And what the unions are saying, and what all well-thinking persons are saying, is that where you have a job that is genuinely short-term, nothing is wrong with having a contract or a fixed-term contract. But wherever you have a long-term arrangement, you shouldn't pretend it's a temporary and fixed-term relationship. The United Kingdom and other countries have fixed this problem, where people are pretending it's short-term when in fact it's intended to be longer-term, and they have passed legislation to fix it. We intend in Jamaica, as the opposition intend, to bring the law forward to allow for fixed-term contract, but to regulate it in such a way that you can't disguise a full-term or an indefinite contract as a temporary fixed-term contract.
Yeah, I hear you. But what I was asking specifically is because I know a lot has been said about it in recent weeks. I know that there is a move afoot to have some seminar next month to speak about this particular issue with the Jamaica Employers Federation and so on. But what I was asking specifically is if you find that more and more employers are using fixed-term contracts.
Yeah, I think a lot of employers are going there. They see it as a cheap way. They see it as a route around some of the labor laws and a way really to exploit employees. And even though you give good unemployment numbers, the reality is that the demands for jobs, especially at the lower level, is very high. And that favors the employer who can say, well, these are the terms and conditions of employment.
Is
So
it
it's not only the low paid people. I mean, I know of a case right now where somebody was employed on a fixed term contract for 5 years.
If I might put it into context, the issue really is that existing labor laws protect employees in an employment relationship, right? So that's a continuous, quote unquote, permanent relationship with an employer. So what you find in recent times is that employers are trying to avoid some of the obligations that come with that employment relationship in terms of maternity protection, vacation leave, sick leave, redundancy, which accrues after 2 years of continuous employment. So what you find persons doing as a device to avoid those obligations is to engage the workers on short-term contracts because, of course, labor laws only apply to employees, not independent contractors, not those persons in those tenuous arrangements.
Right, but if...
But except though, Miss Folks, maternity leave, once you're there for 1 year, you're entitled to maternity leave. I think it's more geared to protect against the redundancy payment act. And that is part of what new legislation to be brought by the opposition will aim to address. So it will make it no benefit to the employer to try and go around the labor laws. Vacation leave, even though you're on fixed-term contract, you're still entitled to vacation leave. So there are some benefits specifically that they try to go around this fixed-term contract. The laws need to be changed and will be changed to protect the
Okay,
workers.
before we get to the law, let's... I hear you trying to come in.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that if you're on a fixed-term contract for 1 year, at the end of the life of that contract, you no longer have a job. The employer no longer has an obligation to you. So the shorter the duration of the contract, it's a device to get around the application of these labor laws, including possibly maternity leave, because based on the contract, you have no job to come back to because your contract ends at 12 months, for instance. But I understand what Mr. Brown is saying in terms of those contracts being perpetually renewed. And that's definitely something to be addressed because it means, therefore, that if you have consecutive 1 year contracts, then after a while, what you find is that the person is being employed for 3 years, and at the end of each year, there's a break. And that is the clearest indication that, hey, this employer is actually trying to avoid certain responsibilities.
I hear keep saying that. You're saying it, Mr. Brown is saying that they're trying to avoid certain responsibilities. Mr. Golding, former Prime Minister, wrote something in the paper a few months ago, saying it cost an employer 12% of their actual wage to employ a worker. And when you look at the NIS and the NHT and the education tax and so on, people will say, if I pay my employers all of the 12%, if I take on this 12% cost, then my business is no longer viable. So I have to go the route of this short-term contract. What is wrong with that? If there's no establishment, if there's no organization, you don't have a job in my organization.
You see, the point of the matter is that we have to bring back the humanity into employment. And what has happened is that the short-term contracts as a device has dehumanized the worker and kind of given preeminence to the needs of the business itself. There are ways of a business remaining viable and still not compromising the interests of the worker. Because at the end of the day, when someone is on consecutive short-term contracts, these kind of temporary work arrangements, further down the line, when it comes to retirement, for instance, they're in a very precarious situation because nothing is in place because they were not employed in such a way. So it doesn't become the responsibility of the enterprise at that time. It falls on the social welfare mechanism of the country. So it's going to cost in the long run. So I'm thinking that the solution cannot be that we're going to disenfranchise the workers by using these arrangements. It cannot be that we're going to allow that to happen because at some point down the road, we're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, but Mr. Brown, same question to you. I'm protecting my business interest by not giving you a permanent contract with my organization because I need to remain in business. Don't you give that to the employers?
Well, firstly, I agree with all Miss Folks just said. Secondly, in terms of a business, oftentimes you think you're protecting your own interest. The lack of loyalty by your employer, which is one of the features of these short-term contracts, is going to hurt you because you're going to be constantly renewing your staff, retraining your staff. That adds up in terms of costs and probably even worse. And in business where you depend on good customer relationship, you suffer. I mean, you just look at some place, you go every day a new security guard. It doesn't build up the type of relationship you want with your customers. So there's a short-term view, but in the long term, the business really doesn't benefit. And that is why you see more businesses are recognizing the need to motivate their staff, to involve in engagement with the staff, that keep the staff attached to the company, that brings the staff into looking at ways in which you can be more productive and reduce costs to the company. In other words, it's about how you treat your employees and whether you invest in them in a way that they will bring you the reward you want. Shortcut, draw blood, and cheap road is never ever the best road.
All right, so on that note, we'll take our first break on public interest. When we come back, we want to talk about this issue of the industrial dispute tribunal because that is also a factor in this discussion. Stay with us on public interest. Welcome back to Public Interest. We're discussing the use of fixed-term contracts in employment. We're being joined in studio by Kadria Folks. She's an attorney at law who specializes in labor law, and opposition senator and trade unionist Lambert Brown is on the phone. Before we went on break, I told you we were going to touch on this issue of the industrial dispute tribunal because one of the things that we hear employers are saying is they rely on these fixed-term contracts to protect themselves from the IDT because there seems to be a bias at the IDT against employers. Do you buy that argument?
Definitely not. I do not believe that the IDT is biased against employers. If most of the awards appear to be in favor of employees, it's because the employer acted incorrectly. And I've never seen a situation where an employer who asserts otherwise is able to support that, you know, to say that this decision is necessarily wrong. I mean, a few have been appealed successfully on points of law, but I do not see where that view really carries strongly. The IDT is really an independent arbiter right? And so when a matter goes before the IDTs, I think some of the main concerns, especially expressed by council, is that the IDT is not governed by its own precedent, you know, and that the rules are not clearly established.
And there's no explanation sometimes of the ruling, so you don't know what exactly their point.
And that's correct, because the IDT is not required to do any of that. The thing about it is that we need to understand the creature of the IDT and what it was created to be. And it's operating within the confines of that. It was expected to be an informal way of arbitrating on industrial disputes. What we seem to be leaning towards now is the need for more of an industrial court kind of situation, right? Where, you know, you'd have rules of procedure, where you'll have clear rules of evidence, leading evidence, and all of that.
So what does that do? Dispatch with the IDT, or this is an additional court that you're making mention of?
Not dispatch, but to bring it up to the needs, the current needs of the labor market. I would definitely support a move to have a court, you know, something more all-encompassing, so all employment-related issues, not just industrial disputes, can go to the IDT, because certainly such a move would enrich the jurisprudence. You know, and you just have one central specialized court. I mean, it can only augur well for the practice of labor and employment law and industrial relations in Jamaica.
Okay, Mr. Brown, you're trying to come in.
Yeah, essentially, I've been at around the IDT since the 70s when it came into being.
You've bested many of the attorneys there, right?
That's true, but I'm not even going to go into that today. Many Queen's Councils too. The reality is that the IDT was set up to bring some order and to allow for a new regime from the common law. The common law, which said essentially the employer could fire.
Iron fire at will.
What the 75 Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act did is to say we're putting in the hands of three persons. One appointed by the government, one from the employers, one from the union, to review cases of dismissal and to move it from the cold concrete of the contract law and the common law into humanitarian situation, to recognizing that work is something that must be accorded dignity, that we must respect the worker's right to the job in the same way that the worker must give to the employer a fair share for the day.
But do you understand?
And the tribunal has done that in the main. No need for change, I'd say.
But do you understand the fear that employers have of the IDT, and so they try to avoid the situation?
Let me tell you, 40 years ago, the employers had a fear for maternity leave. I just read this week that their company were employing people who are pregnant and who are giving them maternity leave even before they start. So, 40 years ago, if you were a teacher and you got pregnant and you was married, automatic dismissal. The world has changed to recognize that dignity must be accorded to labor. We're at that point in Jamaica. Or some of the employers, they cry about everything. And they need to recognize that. I mean, I saw, for example, Serena Williams' husband saying he supports paternity leave. I say in America, they know what they call dad's advocate. That is father's advocating for family leave. The world has changed, and we must move with it. And the seminar you speak of to be held next month in collaboration between the Employers Federation and the trade union is to look at some of these issues. And I would say, as I've spoken to some of my employers' friends, it's a non-issue what they're appealing about. The IDT has served well. There's a judgment today in the Gleaner that the Supreme Court upheld the tribunal. Why? Because an employer representative gave evidence in a matter and was part of the trial of the person in that matter. Somebody being a judge in their own cause. That's a long-standing rule of law. You can't be a judge in your own cause, and then the tribunal said so, and the Supreme Court upheld that, as they have upheld many. I think we just need to settle down, talk the issues through, reason them out, and come to conclusion that is good for Jamaica. I want to commend Colonel Charles for moving in 2010 to change the law to allow individual workers access to the IDT, because that now allow for people on fixed term contract as well as regular contracts to get some amount of justice at the IDT.
Right. So earlier had mentioned, I think it was you, Ms. Folks, who had mentioned regulating fixed term contracts. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think for starters, there needs to be some kind of policy guidance to employers to say, listen, you can't have more than X percentage of your staff on fixed term contracts. And also there needs to be ways of assessing the real needs of the business, because some businesses will definitely genuinely benefit from short-term contracts. For instance, like the hotel sector, where sometimes you need seasonal workers. In those situations, you can readily justify. But in the service industry, generally speaking, an office situation where you have someone on successive one-year contracts, that's untenable. So if there are real needs, then the law should be amended to accommodate that and to allow us to make some kind of objective assessment as to whether or not a real need exists, and then to what extent. And also, there is also more progressive legislative approaches whereby we can avoid the limitation of the standard employment relationship. So as I said, the labor laws apply to employees and employers. However, if you broaden the scope of who the law applies to, then we're able to capture these, atypical, non-standard type of ways of engaging workers. And by that I mean, okay, so the labor law will tell you who it applies to, an employer and an employee. In a situation where you have a temporary contract and say the contract says this worker is an independent contractor, right? We don't have to go into the nitty-gritty to ascertain whether or not that person is an independent contractor if we have a legal system which says that it applies to workers and we define workers broadly. For instance, under the proposed occupational safety and health legislation, the definition of worker includes an employee, which is where traditional labor regulation would stop. But it goes forward to speak to contractors and subcontractors and apprentices and public sector workers. That way, whatever you call that relationship, however you slice or dice it, the law would apply to the worker. So the occupational safety and health legislation, for instance, if passed, would apply to workers that traditional labor laws don't apply to. So that worker would not be getting vacation leave or sick leave, for instance. But in terms of occupational safety and health, the employer or whoever they work for, whether or not that person wants to be vested with the responsibility of an employer, would still be obligated to that worker because of the language of the legislation. And so in that situation, we no longer talk about employers, because employers only have a relationship with the employees and thereby legal obligation. We talk about a person conducting a business or undertaking, which is a convenient concept that allows us to get around the limitations of the traditional employment relationship. So that is a very progressive approach. As far as I know, there's no intention right now to have that across the board. But certainly if that were to be implemented, then we'll see the real effects of that, because even security guards will be covered by that legislation. Security guards who, in my personal opinion, are engaged in disguised employment relationship, regardless of what their work arrangement says, their contract. As a matter of fact, the International Labour Organization, which is a standard-setting body internationally, has a recommendation 198, which speaks to disguised employment relationship, and it suggests that when you're trying to make an assessment as to the true nature of the relationship, you look at the substance and not the form. So you don't look at the contract, which is headed independent contractor contract and refers at all times to the worker as independent contractor. You look beyond that to see how the work is organized and all those incidents of employment.
But I would just add one thing, that the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act, through a joint agreement between the employers and the Jamaica Employers Federation and the Confederation of Trade Union, and an amendment to the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act, which spoke about contracts, whichever way it looked, once it had certain criteria in it, then they could fall under the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act. You're absolutely right. Security guards is one such group, and I think they fall under the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act now. But changes need to come, and I can say the opposition is clearly going to be making some proposal in respect to labor laws and improvement for contract workers and for other workers, including paternity leave.
All right, on that note, thank you, Ms. Folks, and thank you, Senator Brown, for being on the program today. We're going to take a break on public interest. When we come back, we're going to speak about Ms. Lou and whether she should be named a national hero. Stay with us. Welcome back to Public Interest. I am Andre Jebinson. It's our social media segment, and today we want to discuss Miss Lou and whether she should be named a national hero. Many people have been calling for her to be named one, but it hasn't happened as yet. But before we get to our discussion, we had asked you on social media if Miss Lou should be named a national hero. And Winston Gell from YouTube says that yes, Miss Lou should be named a national hero because she has contributed to the building of the nation through her folk tales and the performing arts of the country. And Charles says, yes, Miss Lou should be named and was a real icon and should be honored. Joining us for the discussion is Kevin O'Brien Chang. He's an author and public affairs commentator. And also with us is Owen Speed. He is the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. Gentlemen, both of you believe that Miss Lou should be honored. Mr. Speed, you wrote in the paper that, well, you had a comment in the paper that says Miss Lou should be named a national hero. Tell us why that is your view.
Well, one, if you're looking at gender equality, I don't think the work of the men have so far outdone the work of the women in this country. And if you look at Miss Lou's body of work over the years, she has done so much. And at a time when she was getting a little bit of a pushback in terms of people looking on and listening to her, the language that she was using at the time. And another thing too is that she didn't get a lot of money out of what she was doing. It was more out of love for the nation and love for what she was doing, embracing the culture and encouraging people to embrace the culture, even if she didn't even realize that she was doing it. But it was done. And I think she should be awarded for that.
All right, so Mr. O'Brien Chang, a national hero is the most senior award according to the Jamaica Information Service. The order may be conferred upon someone who was born in Jamaica or at the time of his or her death was a citizen of Jamaica and has rendered rendered to Jamaica service of a most distinguished nature. Does Miss Lou fall in the category of a national hero?
Well, let me put it to you this way. If you're a Jamaican, what are you proud of? We're not rich, we're not big, and we're not an ancient country. We're part of our culture, right? Mm-hmm. That's what makes us all over the world. And who created Jamaican culture? It's simplification, other people contributed, but Jamaican culture can be defined pre-Miss Lou and after Miss Lou. Pre-Miss Lou, it was pseudo-English, the speaker spoke English thing. After that, after Miss Lou, it's a full, confident Jamaican Africanist is there. We talk how we among ourselves. We're not afraid to express ourselves in our own language. The folk songs, the sayings, the ring games. Miss Lou was the biggest researcher in all of this, by the way. She is the one that did the most to preserve the retentions, And so she, in essence, created the culture that conquered the world, because Jamaican culture has gone worldwide. So I don't think anybody since independence has made a bigger contribution to Jamaica than Miss Lou. They talk about the politics. The politics is only part of life. And Jamaica culture is what makes us what we are. If we are special as Jamaicans, it's because our culture is special. And without Miss Lou, what culture would we have?
So what are you saying, national hero?
If not national hero, something equivalent. Some people think heroes are political. If not, maybe a Jamaican icon along with a Bob Marley. I simplify Jamaican culture this way. Miss Lou created Jamaican culture, Bob Marley spread it around the world. Others were there, but that's a snapshot which many people see.
Mr. Speed, you're not all sold on what Mr. Chang is saying.
Of course I'm sold. But one of the criteria for being a national hero is not necessarily to sell it across the world. It's if you have rendered distinguished service to Jamaica. So Miss Lou has done that. And even if she didn't do enough, because let's face it, Marcus Garvey might not be recognized in Europe, for example, as anyone of any worth. But he has done what he had done for us. And so we have to recognize that. So Miss Lou, I think, in terms of the body of work, cannot be disputed. Nobody has equaled.
Yeah, but once you start talking about national hero, three other people are going to come to mind or be part of the discussion. Most recently, people say Edward Seaga, Bob Marley.
Usain Bolt, I hear Usain Bolt even.
Michael Manley.
Yes.
Right, so why Miss Lou and not them?
I'm not saying not them. All I'm saying, because I'm not putting down anybody else to promote Miss Lou. All I'm saying is that I think the time is right.
But why you make the call for Miss Lou and not them?
Well, it's maybe one at a time, but I've put Miss Lou first. I think she is highest on the list at this time.
So would you also countenance the others, the name we just mentioned, being named national heroes?
Listen, my thing is, the politicians have their parties to take care of them. Bob Marley have all his brand and money. Miss Lou only has Jamaicans' love. So the others can be given honors. I want Miss Lou to be given the highest honor in the land. If not national hero, something equivalent. We cannot.
But there's nothing equivalent to that.
We can create something, Jamaican icon. We could create one for Bob Marley and Miss Lou as a Jamaican icon. I mean, all the merit is good, but there's so many people in there. Sir Sidney Ramfall. What? Nothing, good man, good. But what does he mean to the average Jamaican? Nothing. Miss Lou and Bob Marley, but Miss Lou, Jamaicans instantly know her. They recognize her. They see themselves in her. As a Minister Green, Minister Green said recently, Miss Lou is like a mother to Jamaicans. She taught us to be proud of who we are. She gave Jamaican self-pride. The sense of Jamaican identity before Miss Lou was what? We are imitating British and all that. After Miss Lou, we are fully ourselves. We fully embrace all our heritage, including African heritage, which she said at the time people were looking down upon. She also fought for racial equality or racial pride. So we don't know, the children need to know more about her for sure. But as I say, her contribution to the sense of the Jamaican identity, how we think of ourselves, is unmatched since independence. I would say her impact on the Jamaican psyche is bigger than those three people. Bigger than Manley, bigger than Saga, bigger than Bob Marley, because she came before them until Miss Lou's poems came in the Gleaner in 1943. Jamaicans felt ashamed to speak in their dialect, how they speak among themselves.
Yes.
When I went in public, I have to pretend to be something else. After Miss Lou, I can be what I am. That contribution was, as I say, unmatched in terms of making us proud abroad. We are proud to be Jamaican. Who contributed more than Miss Lou to them? To that?
I hear what you're saying about being proud, but are we really that proud? Because we still have that part of Jamaica that says, boy, you need to talk English, even though you're talking about the word that Miss Lou. Not even context.
Of course, in context.
Because there are parents who say to their children, speak English.
No, you have to be able to code switch. Miss Lou could code switch beautifully. And the argument is that yes, you have to be able to speak English when you need to. But when you are speaking Jamaican,
but apart from that, there are people who not just say learn to speak English so you can get a job abroad or you can get a job in Jamaica. But there are people who say don't talk patois.
Yes, but
they don't want their children speaking patois.
But flexibility is something that we have to look at. And Miss Lou could have translated the Creole to English, and she did that very well. So that showed you that in context you can use the language.
We're running out of time. Sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Chang, you have for this year you've created a storyboard for schools. Tell us a little about
Yeah,
that.
we did a storyboard. My company, Fontana Pharmacy, donated to over 1,700 schools, libraries, ministries, because the young folks don't know a lot about Miss Lou. You ask about Miss Lou, oh, she wrote poetry, made us laugh. They don't know her depth of her contributions.
What roles do schools play in that? Because Mr. Chang is saying, and he expressed this off here as well, people don't know the work of Miss Lou as much as they should. If you ask them about politics, most people can tell you about politics. If you ask them about the music, they can tell you about the music. But schools, do they have a role in trying to embody the work of Miss Lou?
And not just Miss Lou, but every year there's a Miss Lou Day on the calendar. And that is promoted in many schools. I wouldn't say in as many schools as we would have liked. But the JTA would be willing to participate in any form of action to promote Miss Lou and the work of Miss Lou. So there we can play a part.
Okay.
I want to take a Mr. Speed on that.
And as a country, have we promoted Miss Lou enough the way that we should? As a country, generally speaking, from the government to the schools to organizations.
Well, listen, we give Lou a lot of credit. We're giving her a statue, and in the schools, my daughters, when they have Heritage Day just the other day, a lot of it is with Miss Lou, the poems, the folk songs. We've done a lot. Can we do more? Yes, we can.
All right, Mr. Chang, Mr. Speed, thank you very much. And please stay with us on Public Interest. When we come back, we're going to revisit this issue of the plastic ban. Stay with us. You'll remember on January 1 this year, the government imposed a plastic ban. Karen Brownow takes a look at that initiative.
Plastic pollution is one of the world's biggest environmental concerns. This is because plastics take hundreds or even thousands of years to break down. Therefore, the damage to our environment can be long-lasting. To combat the potential damage to our island, the government imposed a ban on single-use 24 by 24 inches plastic bags, expanded polystyrene foam, and plastic straws. But what are the alternatives to these products? We spoke first with James Harvey, business manager at Dynamic Packaging and Products Limited.
Our Dynamic Packaging Products Limited has been around for some 35 years. Our primary business is the production of non-corrugated boxes for really a wide cross-section of businesses. We provide a really wide range of boxes. As I say, and I just list some of them basically, as I said, like pharmaceutical boxes, the tea boxes, you have the cone boxes, you have the patty boxes, you have the pastry boxes, whether they are branded or unbranded. We have one location here at on Ashenheim Road, but of course we do distribution throughout the entire island once the market is there. It is a limited company, as you would have recognized, and we are here to stay. Having heard about the ban, the truth is that we moved to seize the opportunity and to make best use of it, whilst we were still in the expansion mode even before. But even more so now, we think that we are the the #1 box producing company here in Jamaica, and as a result, we are the first reference point to a great extent for many persons. So we're definitely looking towards capitalizing on this new opportunity to the best and to the fullest amidst all the competition that will come or is already there. Well, the only alternative would have been the paper bags. To a great extent, I mean, a lot of supermarkets will move towards the reusable bags to try and enforce that and to try to change that culture amongst the Jamaican population. But outside of that, the alternative is going to be paper bags, which definitely is something that we're going to be moving towards producing as well. The larger ones, I mean, whilst we were already, the production of the smaller paper bags were already done here locally. There was really no production of the larger bags, and it's definitely something that we were looking to get involved in.
To meet the demand that the plastic ban has, and you are saying that you're producing over 100 million lunch boxes.
Yeah.
Would you say that we need probably 5 or 6 times that amount if we are going to eliminate fully the plastic ban?
Estimate, just from an estimated standpoint, basically, I would think 2 times. I would want to think 2 or 3 times, because the truth is that we really don't know the size of the market from where we stand at the moment. But for one, I will tell you that we're gearing up. We definitely be looking to install some additional machine to deal with this in particular. So we're looking like a special gluing machine that will be able to do these special type of boxes, which produce at a much faster pace as we go along. So at least 2 or 3 times what it is now. At the same time, I'm anticipating that the competition is going to be stiffer. A lot of persons might be looking into to actually import boxes and that sort of thing. But we are in manufacturing, and that's where our heart is. And if we manufacture, we can always beat the competitors' price for those who are going to be importing.
The ban on plastic and the styrofoam has created an opportunity for young entrepreneurs to come up with innovative concepts to fill the void left by the ban. 2 of these companies are EcoThings and Those Creative People.
Well, the plastic ban is a beautiful thing to happen to Jamaica, right? It's something that has been happening, as I see, in multiple cities or countries around the world. So, and actually I think that plastic ban is more a reaction to what is happening universally as an energy in the world. Because even before this plastic ban, people were already moving towards a more natural lifestyle, a more healthy lifestyle, a more vegan lifestyle, as we hear at a vegan restaurant. You know, so I think it's just a continued move in the right direction. So it's like it puts it now in front of your face, where you have to face it. You know, even the people that were trying to avoid it, now you have to face it. And so hopefully the plastic ban will encourage people not only to stop using plastic, but also to interact with our environment in a more eco-friendly way, you know, because it's the only earth we have, we don't have another home, you know, so, yeah. In terms of the plastic ban, I offer metal straws, glass straws. I also have some bamboo straws that I'm bringing. So I actually much prefer these reusable straws to like to paper straws, which I think they're going to start bringing because of the plastic ban. But a paper straw, after 4 hours, 2 hours, leave it in the water, it will become nothing. And again, it will become litter, waste, and add to pollution. So I always support using eco-friendly things. I don't think they have banned plastic spoons or forks, but again, I encourage to use reusable items. I have here a bamboo spork, which is a spoon and a fork in one, made of bamboo. So that you can carry I personally carry it around, right? So I don't really eat plastic forks or use styrofoam. Here's also a calabash, which I intend on providing soon. So for anybody who don't know calabash grow on a tree, right? And it's green, and then what we do is pick it, make it dry, take out all this that's inside, and really and truly just make a beautiful bowl. Very sturdy. Yeah, man. You can't find nothing wrong with that. That's using from the beginning of time. Yeah, so in terms of the plastic ban, I think those are the items that I have that can help you to make the transition a little bit easier. I have other items that will just generally help you to interact with your environment in a more eco-friendly way. So, for example, the nut milk bag, which is, I endorse the use of coconuts, right? So, using coconut to make coconut milk, Jamaicans used to make rice and peas and da. But again, using powdered coconut milk is almost like using plastic, because the process you have to go through to make powder milk, the packaging you have to go to put a powder milk in. So why not just go and get some coconut from the market? So again, that's a part of the vision, to encourage people to use the things that are right here in front of us, especially as Jamaicans, because we have that advantage.
And what we do is that we take Jamaican culture and we put Jamaican culture on a number of different products in a creative way. So for example, one of the things that with the scandal, the single-use plastic ban, we created grocery bags, reusable grocery bags, and we put Jamaican slangs on it, like the scandal and scandal-free life and not a scandal bag. Just kind of taking the play on the whole scandal bag and and just put it on a product that you wouldn't normally see it. One of the things that we've always done is that we've always put an emphasis on sustainability, generally speaking, and it is, as a small company, it can be challenging sometimes because we don't have a lot of cash and economies of scale that larger companies do. So we constantly have to be tweaking things. And so one of the things that we have done is we've always made a conscious effort to try to always use as little plastic as we can and as much paper. So for example, this may seem small, or trivial, but I think it goes to the heart of what we've done is we've never labeled any of our products with, those small plastic tags that when you go to a clothes store and it has the price tag on it, and that small little plastic string that's attached, we've never used that just because we felt like it always violated our ethos. So we've always used cloth, string, and paper tags, and so generally speaking, we are a very sustainably minded company, and so that reflects itself in a lot of our choices. So we have different types of bags, right? So one, our cloth tote is a canvas material, and that's more for fashion, lifestyle, every day. For the grocery bags, those are the typical, reusable polypropylene bags that all the supermarkets are selling now. If you go into, Whole Foods in the US, for instance, or Publix, or even like, Mega Mart and Price Mart and stuff out here, those bags that they sell, the material is the same. It's called a polypropylene. It's slightly biodegradable, but, it's more reusable, so you don't. The whole idea is to try and get people not to throw away, the bag on the first use, right after, they've used it. So some products, for instance, are paper-based, like our cards and our gift tags. Those, we work with our local printer, and they source the paper for us, and then we work with them to do the printing, and we do all the design here locally. In terms of our bags, a lot of those bags or all the bags they're sourced overseas, and then we bring them in for our canvas stores. We buy them overseas, we bring them in, and then we print them here locally. For the scandal bag replacement, the grocery bags, we source them overseas, print them overseas, and bring them in. And we've looked at alternatives in Jamaica. The challenge that Jamaica has is not cost competitive enough, particularly for a small company. Like for the quantities that we are talking about, which is hundreds or thousands, it would be too expensive for us to make that out here relative to buying it overseas and bringing it in. One of the challenges as a small company is always access to capital. In our case, the way we started our company is we can pool resources. So we also, the team, different members of the team do different things. So my two partners, Kia and Jordan Moses, both of them do advertising, right? So they run a small advertising agency. I do consulting. So we came together and we said, okay, let's just pool the resources and we invest in the company. And when we did that, We just, all the profits that we got from from the initial investment, we just kept reinvesting. However, recently, an opportunity came up. The DBJ had announced that they had a program called the Ignite Grant, and we applied for it. And happy to report that we were selected, and so we have been approved. So big up to the DBJ. They're a huge support of building capacity and helping to strengthen SMEs. But in terms of going forward, the plan is basically to just keep reinvesting, keep growing. As we get bigger, if we do need to raise capital, which I suspect that we will at some point, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But we want to kind of grow as organically as we can for now, and as we grow, then we'll look at alternative financing options.
As we eagerly anticipate the full implementation of the ban on plastic, we do hope that other countries around the world will also make similar steps to preserve our planet.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that report, and that will do it for this edition of Public Interest. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Andre Jepinson wishing you a good evening, and we'll see you next time.